Greetings, sports rivalry fans. My name is Matthew Camp.
And I'm Tim Coleman, and we are with SportRivalry.com.
This week we have three great matchups for you. First and foremost, we're going to be looking at Wisconsin going against the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
And we'll follow with Michigan versus Michigan State.
To close out our show, we're going to be talking about Florida State University going against Miami, a matchup that originally was scheduled for the 16th of September, but due to Hurricane Irma, had to be rescheduled for this weekend. First and foremost, we're going to look at the history of each rivalry, Michigan versus Michigan State, as well as Nebraska versus Wisconsin, will be given to us by Skylar Workman.
Then we'll follow with Sam Morris with the history of Florida State versus Miami.
For each rivalry, we'll have a fan perspective given to us by our very own Jayla Sims. Tim and I are then going to talk about each one of our rivalries and how they're doing this season, as well as what we think the outcome of each game is going to be.
We have some awesome matchups planned for you all this week, and this week is going to be a great show, so sit back and enjoy it.
History of the rivalry. Wisconsin-Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Hello, this is Skylar Workman with SportRivalry.com. Today we're going to talk about the rivalry between the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Wisconsin Badgers. Let's join Sport Rivalry Man on a brief history of the Nebraska-Wisconsin rivalry. The first matchup between the Cornhuskers and the Badgers was in 1901. The two teams did not play each other again for 64 years. Wisconsin leads the series over Nebraska 7-4. Wisconsin and Nebraska have many similarities. They are both the only FBS school in their state, which leads to statewide support of the team. They are both known as blue-collar teams. Both universities are located in the capital of their state. The rivalry came about after the Cornhuskers joined the Big Ten Conference in 2011. The conference realignment created a rivalry between schools that are 480 miles apart. After the 2014 season, Bleacher Report labeled it as the best emerging college football rivalry. The Cornhuskers had the second largest comeback in program history to defeat the Badgers at Memorial Stadium in the 2012 regular season, 30-27. The two met again just over 2 months later in the 2012 Big Ten Football Championship game, where the unranked Badgers defeated the highly favored number 14 Cornhuskers 70-31. Before the 2014 game, the athletic departments of both schools announced that they would begin playing for a trophy that honors the nation's military. This new Freedom Trophy helped to solidify the rivalry status between the schools. The 2014 game is known as the Melvin Gordon game. The Wisconsin running back ran for 408 yards on 25 carries. He averaged over 16 yards per carry, which to that point was the highest ever in an FBS game. Today's lesson is about the disposition theory. The disposition theory is when people celebrate when someone they like is successful and when someone they dislike is unsuccessful. Thank you for your time. This has been Skylar Workman with SportRivalry.com, signing off.
Bold predictions. Alright, SportRivalry.com listeners, today we are going to dive into our first matchup, which will pit the Wisconsin Badgers against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, on paper, folks, this is a very lopsided contest this weekend. The Wisconsin Badgers are 4-0 overall, 1-0 in conference play. They come into this matchup ranked number 9 in the AP poll, while on the other side of the ball, the Nebraska Cornhuskers come into this contest with an overall record of 3-2. However, they do have a 2-0 conference record to their resume this season. ESPN.com has the Wisconsin Badgers taking this showdown by 86.7% over the Cornhuskers. And quite frankly, I can't disagree with that. Looking at the matchup between these two teams, Wisconsin is scoring close to 41 points a game while only allowing 13.5. However, Nebraska is scoring 30 points per game and only allowing 24.4. That margin for the Cornhuskers is a lot slimmer than the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin's also moving the ball more efficiently with close to 460 total yards average per game, while only allowing just under 250. I find that the Wisconsin Badgers are a very complete team this year. This is a team that contested for that Big Ten title last year, and I think that they have earned their spot to be back in that discussion. The Big Ten is solidifying itself as one of, if not the premier conference in college football. I know some SEC fans out there are going to disagree with that, but ladies and gentlemen, the tide has turned. The Big Ten is legit and they are here to stay. With the quality of competition and the pedigree that comes with each and every conference victory and matchup, I find that these two teams, the Wisconsin Badgers and Nebraska Cornhuskers, are legit. But when the two teams are pitted against each other, I'm liking the Wisconsin Badgers in a dominant fashion. Fan perspective.
Hey sports fans, this is Jayla Sims with SportRivalry.com, and I am here with your fan perspective.
One Wisconsin fan shared, "That trophy means something. I think that when there's something to win, it makes everything so much more intense. How many teams play a regular season game for a trophy or anything other than a win or bragging rights? It's just that big. Nebraska fans are so rowdy, and I guess we just feel like we're just better. But when you're playing Nebraska, things aren't always going to go your way. They just have this momentum. But we have momentum too. It's always going to come down to the last few minutes and who is going to execute just a little bit better. That's something we have to be prepared to do in every game, but especially when we play Nebraska. This is going to be a good one."
History of the rivalry. Michigan versus Michigan State.
Hello, this is Skylar Workman of SportRivalry.com. Today we're going to talk about the rivalry between the Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans, known as the Paul Bunyan Trophy. Let's join Sport Rivalry Man on a brief history of the Michigan-Michigan State rivalry. The two teams first met on October 12, 1898. The largest victory in the series was in 1902 when Michigan beat Michigan State 119-0. Michigan leads the series overall 70, 53, and 5. The game's trophy is the Paul Bunyan Trophy that reflects Michigan's history as a major lumber-producing state. In 1953, the trophy was first presented to commemorate Michigan State joining the Big Ten Conference. For both universities, the trophy is a symbol of football supremacy in the state of Michigan. Michigan came into the 1990 matchup ranked number 1 in the country. Michigan State won on a controversial call in the last seconds of the game. Both teams went on to tie for the Big Ten title with conference records of 6-2. In the 2001 game, Michigan State was stopped on the 1-yard line with 17 seconds remaining. The Spartans rushed to the line and spiked the ball with 1 second on the clock. The next play, the Spartans quarterback threw a touchdown pass to win the game 26-24. The Michigan announcer would insist for years that the clock was incorrect and Michigan was cheated. After review of the game video and clock, the Big Ten coordinator of officials determined that no mistake had been made. On October 20th, 2012, the Wolverines beat the Spartans for the first time since 2007. This was the 900th win for the Wolverines, making them the first program to reach this level in college football history. Michigan State has always been viewed as the little brother to Michigan. Although Michigan historically has the upper hand, Michigan State has won 7 out of the last 10 matchups. No team has upset the Wolverines as many times as the Spartans have. In today's lesson, we will focus on the definition of sport rivalry. Sport rivalry is defined as a fluctuating adversarial relationship existing between two teams, players, or groups of fans, gaining significance through on-field competition, on-field or off-field incidences, proximity, demographic makeup, and/or historical occurrences. Thank you for your time. This has been Skylar Workman with SportRivalry.com, signing off.
Bold predictions.
What's going on, everyone? It's Tim here to give you perspective of how each team is doing so far this season. Michigan currently holds an undefeated 4-0 record, coming off of a Big Ten win against Purdue. Michigan State currently holds a 3-1 record, taking its only loss this season to Notre Dame. They come off of a Big Ten win, however, over the Iowa Hawkeyes. As far as offense, Michigan currently has their starting quarterback Wilton Speight sidelined, starting with fifth-year senior John O'Korn as his replacement. O'Korn finished his first start of the season with an impressive 270 passing yards, completing 18 of 26 pass attempts to lead the Wolverines to the second win of his career. Speight's return for this Michigan State matchup is highly unlikely, and it will be interesting to see when he actually returns. Michigan State's offense saw career highs for receiver Felton Davis III against previous opponent Iowa, recording 9 catches, 114 receiving yards, and 2 touchdown catches. Michigan State's quarterback Brian Lewerke finished with his third 200 passing game of the season, completing 18 of 28 passes, even leading in rushing for 42 yards. Down to defense, Michigan State's defense in their last match against Iowa only allowed 19 yards on 25 carries. Impressive, as I expect that same energy in this week's matchup against Michigan. Michigan State's offense is definitely going to have its battle against this Wolverine defense. The Wolverines currently have the strongest defense in the nation, only allowing just over 202 yards per game. In addition, they also lead the nation in sacks, averaging about 4.5 sacks per game. It's going to be really interesting to see how Michigan State holds on through such pressure. My final thoughts: with O'Korn coming off of a high-level performance, I believe his momentum will carry him over into this week. I believe this kid is hungry and has been waiting for a chance to show himself. Michigan and Michigan State's defensive play is going to be tough to get over. It'll be interesting to see which team is able to play enough offense to come over the top. Predictions for this game, I would have to go with Michigan. The combination of both the strong defense and the hungry quarterback, I believe, will carry the Wolverines over the top.
Fan perspective.
Hey sports fans, this is Jayla Sims with SportRivalry.com, and I am here with your fan perspective. This week, we'll be looking at the Michigan versus Michigan State rivalry. We all know that that's a big one. One of my personal friends from Michigan shared with us her perspective on how she feels about this storied rivalry. She said, "Playing in the big house is already like a seventh wonder. It's just amazing to be there and be around that many people. But when we play Michigan State, it's absolutely insane because State fans just feel like complete foreigners to us. We hate them, they hate us. We are so divided, like the Montagues and the Capulets. But it's always entertaining, and it's always the event to go to. Go Wolverines."
History of the rivalry.
Florida State, Miami.
I am Samuel Morris with SportRivalry.com. The Florida State Seminoles and Miami Hurricanes have been meeting since 1951. The two teams have faced off 61 times, with Florida State leading the close rivalry with an all-time record of 31-30. The Seminoles have won 7 straight games with the Hurricanes since 2010. This rivalry added its drama due to close games and potential game-winning field goals ending up no good. In 1991, both teams were undefeated with national championship hopes, with Florida State ranked 1 in the AP poll, with Miami ranked 2nd. This was a much anticipated game, and it didn't disappoint. The game was tightly contested, with Miami leading 17-16 in the game's late stages. Florida State kicker Gary Thomas was on to help the Seminoles take the lead with a 34-yard field goal with 29 seconds left in the game, but the field goal sailed wide right. This game served as a catalyst for the Sunshine State rivals. Eerily enough, the next game, these two ended in a similar fashion to the 1991 game. Both teams were undefeated again when they faced each other in 1992. The game was 19-16 with Miami leading, Florida State needing a field goal to tie the game in the game's final seconds. Florida State called on kicker Dan Mowry to tie the game, but he missed it to end the game known as Wide Right 2. The two teams have been at the pinnacle of college football since their rivalry began, with Miami having Heisman winners such as Vinny Testaverde and Gino Torretta, while Florida State has had Heisman winners Charlie Ward, Chris Weinke, and Jameis Winston. Look for Miami to try to even the all-time series at 31 apiece on Saturday, October 7th, 3:30 Eastern on ESPN.
Bold predictions. Alright, SportRivalry.com fans, it's time now to take a look at our final matchup of the week, which is going to pit the Miami Hurricanes against the Florida State Seminoles. Now, this matchup, as we mentioned earlier, was set to take place in the middle of September, on September 16th. However, due to Hurricane Irma and just the torrential weather that came through that Florida area, it did have to get pushed back to this week. Now, this has given both teams an opportunity not only to assess some key injuries, such as we saw Florida State's star quarterback go down in their first matchup of the season against the Alabama Crimson Tide, but it also gives both teams an opportunity to stay fresh as the season goes on. These are two teams that definitely have high hopes and aspirations for making a run to the title. So staying fresh, staying ready is something that is of the utmost importance. Now, the Miami Hurricanes, kind of going through a resurgent time in their program's history. Going into this matchup, they were the only ranked team, something that we're not familiar to seeing when Florida State is in the conversation. The Miami Hurricanes are currently 3-0, ranked number 13th in the AP poll. They are led this year by quarterback Malik Rozier. Now, although Malik has thrown 2 interceptions, he has 820 passing yards along with 8 touchdowns. Watching him in this past week's game against Duke University, I was really impressed by his composure. I really liked how he dictated the offense, how he orchestrated the line of scrimmage, how he was able to see the field. Now, on the other side of the ball, we have James Blackman, quarterback for those Florida State Seminoles. Now, going into the year, Mr. Blackman, I assure you, did not think that he was going to have the starting position. However, when injury plagued his team, he had to step up, and through 3 games, 2 of which he has played in full, the young gentleman has 399 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, yet to turn over the ball through an interception, and you know, it's going to take him time to really get comfortable with this offense. The Seminoles come into this matchup 1-2 overall, with 1-1 in conference play. That big loss really coming against North Carolina State 2 weekends ago, and it was only last weekend when the Seminoles narrowly beat Wake Forest that they finally notched that first win of their season. Their big first matchup of the year was against those Alabama Crimson Tide. Most people pitted that as the marquee matchup of the season and one of, if not, the best opening game of college football of all time. Now, Florida State has a lot of maturation to take on during the course of this season. They are not ranked. Not much is expected of them now. They are down in the dumps after a narrow win last weekend and 2 pretty defeating losses already. ESPN.com has them picked by 62.9% to win this week's matchup against the Miami Hurricanes. However, I cannot see the Florida State Seminoles pulling everything together, even at their home stadium, to overtake the mighty Miami Hurricane. Fan perspective.
One Miami student shared with me that going into this game, this is FSU hate week for us. We have lost about the past 7 years. Somehow this game always brings out the best in us, but the worst in us too. And I am a little worried that this game might just get a little hectic and a little crazy. You know, male testosterone and all. But we are excited, and we can't wait to drive to Tallahassee and support our team. It's going to be a good game. It always comes down to the last couple of seconds, and that's what makes it so fun. And of course, whoever wins gloats and brags the entire rest of the season.
Alright, Sport Rivalry fans, thank you so much for tuning into this week's podcast. That's going to bring us to the end of our show. Wanted to give a special thank you to everyone who contributed to the podcast. Skylar Workman, Samuel Morris, Jayla Sims, Ricky Fitzpatrick, Catherine McGowan, and my co-host Tim Coleman. We had a lot of fun bringing you this week's podcast with all of the great matchups. Be sure to tune in next week when we preview the Texas versus Oklahoma matchup. We're going to have some really good insight and a really good perspective on everything that entails that Red River rivalry for you folks. I hope that you have a great weekend. Thank you once again, SportRivalry.com fans, for listening, and we'll see you next week.